Hello everyone, Rendon here. Patch 1.10 is now firmly established in Elden Ring, and I think it's a little bit too early to determine whether or not this has been ultimately very successful or not in regards to PvP changes. I think overall it's been a good thing, but that being said, we definitely need a whole lot more patches to really flesh things out before this can be considered an absolute success. As there is an absolute crap ton of content about this stuff right now, I have decided to respect everyone's time and turn this video into more of a choose-your-own content kind of experience. I will include sections for you to follow with intros and details in each, so you can absorb the content you want to and skip what you don't want to. Obviously, there is an overall theme, and you're welcome to watch the video in full if you desire, but again, just for this video, we will go with this format. What you've been seeing in the background is a lot of use of the Crescent Moon Axe, and more astute observers will have noticed the use of a specific type of pot as well, which I will discuss more in another section. I actually picked up this weapon at Rofothegyrm's recommendation before his video about it released on the cusp of 1.10, as evidenced by the patch timestamp in the bottom right. Just a note, I will be indicating in the same spot which patch the content is in throughout the entire video. Now, I'm not making the disclaimer on when I picked up this weapon to differentiate myself from anyone else who picked it up, but instead to put added emphasis on the fact that you should go check out that content. Because even though I picked up this weapon before that video was released, there were still a lot of things I learned from it afterwards. It's as good of a weapon breakdown video as you can get in the Elden Ring space, and I will include it in the description below. I really think I'd be doing anyone interested in this weapon a disservice if I didn't point them to it. I did not know about the one-handed running R2s, and in a lot of these in 1.09 you'll see me using the axe two-handed. Now there's nothing wrong with using this axe two-handed, because even two-handed the sweeping R2s really shine and are great for host and phantom, crowd control and roll catching. Running R1s or light attacks smoothly transition into the R2s, so people will reaction or panic roll after being hit into them. The crouching R1s on this come out very, very fast and can be mixed into your rotations to really confuse your opponents. In addition, this is a great axe class weapon, so it hits very, very hard, especially on the build that I've chosen for it. Most people watching this video will know the level of difficulty involved in fighting 3 people versus 2, and how much your chances of winning an invasion go up once you manage to knock off one of those phantoms. Crescent Moon Axe with Waves of Darkness is built to do that for you. All you need to do is catch one or more of a party in that INT scaling Ash of War, and they're getting hit by all those waves of darkness, in addition to the follow-up heavy attack, easily doing enough damage to remove players who are not being careful enough or watching what they're doing. And on a strength INT build, Waves of Darkness turns this weapon into one of the best invasion tools you can possess, because of the crowd control and ability to kind of set traps and choke points for parties of 3. Overall, this weapon's in a really great spot right now, and I highly recommend it for anyone doing invasions. Now, since there's already a great video out there about the Crescent Moon Axe, it can't be the hook for this video, so I will offer you instead the Stormcaller into Claymore R2 roll catch. I'm sure if anyone is aware of Stormcaller in this recent patch, you'll know that you can't escape from it. It's going to catch you for all 3 of those little, wind waves, if you get caught in it. And the Claymore R2 roll catch afterwards is going to hit every single time. On a Frost build, it can do a very, very good bit of damage. It's not necessarily going to delete anybody, and it's not like, any of those Diggest Thickest, really heavy, insane damage combos. That's not kind of what I'm looking for. This is something that will help you deal with aggression. get people off of you, and again can kind of springboard you into momentum against some other players or some hosts and phantoms. Now you'll see there it does have one weakness, and that weakness is because things are doing more poise damage in patch 1.10. Throwing dagger spam will knock you out of that R2 afterwards, which is kind of an annoying little thing to have to deal with, but overall it doesn't really take away from the enjoyment of this combo. Alright, we are now getting into the meatiest portion of this video. This is simultaneously the most skippable piece because of its length, while also containing the most detail pertaining to the build itself, and some of the best invasions that are included. If you haven't noticed already by the floating pot kill counter on the screen, this video has an overall narrative pertaining to the real linchpin on this build, Academy Magic Pots. Now if you're not a consumable lover like Halig, or someone like No Name Tryhard, who has done his own video on these deadly beauties way earlier in the Elden Ring cycle, you can be forgiven for not knowing how incredible these things can be. And so the title part of this video comes up. INT builds don't need sorceries. Now that's not to say that they don't benefit from them, but you can make interesting things without them. Much like the joke that lightning pots were the best face spell in Dark Souls 3, to me, these are easily one of the best sorceries in Elden Ring. So some lore and stat context. This is a level 60 strength int build that I have named the Waning Sellsword. Waning comes from the waning moon, which has obvious Carrion royalty tie-ins, and is meant to represent the moon as it wanes in its cycle towards a full eclipse. The idea being that this is a Carrion who has passed his zenith and has little purpose after the fall of his house, other than to sell his services to the only employer still hiring Tarnished, the Recusants. He has largely given up on the use of sorceries due to neglect, and now employs methods similar to the Knights of the Cuckoo to defeat foes. This build is 25 strength and 30 int, because many of the ashes and the pots themselves scale off of int for damage. The amount of kills and damage the Academy Magic Pots can deliver is really astonishing, and is actually pretty scary. One pot alone can do in excess of 400 damage, which at level 60 will usually be enough to prompt the use of a flask. With 10 in your inventory for a fight, if you use them effectively, you can easily whittle down a host and Phantom's resources very quickly, and they do a very good job of finishing players running away because of the AoE size of the explosion. Talismans on this build are pretty basic, because poise is still important enough to not get caught in the second R1 chain of most attacks. We're running Bull Goats, Great Jar's Arsenal to have offhand use or the weight to use an offhand, Radigan's Sword Seal for the extra points, and the Star Scourge Heirloom. My initial root weapon experimentation began with using Longsword offhand dagger in 1.09 to test combos using square off, which I had never really experimented much with before, but had heard was great for roll catching and had a lot of versatility for fights on a medium weapon. The rotation that inspired me to try this originally was combining the thrusting R2 animation on the Longsword into a roll catch R1 or R2 with the swear off ash afterwards. This, in addition to the running R2s on straight swords, was sufficient in 1.09 to make the setup work in invasions with the frost buildup offered by a fast offhand weapon like the dagger. I felt very aggressive with this playstyle, not relying on trades but weaving in and out of my opponent's attacks, getting in damage, and setting up opportunities for them to make mistakes. Running R2s or R1s could lead to a roll catch R2 on the longsword as well because of that thrust animation and its excellent tracking. Patch 1.10 obviously made this playstyle even better, so I'll discuss that a little bit later on. I'm going to let one more invasion play out here, so if you want to go ahead and skip to the next section, feel free to do so, but it shows a little bit more of what I was doing with this before the change. Now, we all know the changes brought by patch 1.10. I won't insult the intelligence of the majority of those people watching this video by pretending that you don't clinically examine PvP patch notes or occasionally have a guilty glance at frame data. Put simply, From buffed the poise damage of almost all weapons to the range where they poise break nearly everyone on the first R1 of attacks, obvious exclusions being things like daggers. The second R1 in chains, however, does far less, making it easier to escape the second R1 after being poise broken on the first. This has created an emphasis on Hyperarmor and making sure you actually have just enough poise to not be stunned on the second R1 to be caught in a loop. You should be able to see the obvious benefit a weapon class like Straight Sword would gain from this change, as those wearing full bullgoats or an equivalent armor set can no longer pretend that I'm hitting them with a wet noodle, and have to respect that I'm actually smacking them in the face with a real weapon. Now, if you're still paying attention, you will know that despite that, a new problem arises to contend with: Hyperarmor. The question then became how to deal with weapon classes that now offered Hyperarmor to just swing through my attacks, and the answer came in the form of the Ash of War Sword Dance. Now, this was the weapon art I was most excited for when ER released. As my favorite weapon from Dark Souls 3, the Follower Saber had Prying Wedge. The idea that I could attach this weapon art to anything of my choice had created large, giddy pockets of speculation in my mind during the beginning of this game. Quickly, though, I realized, with the pressure or the passive poise system in PvP, the only weapons I could use this on and reliably poise break people with were heavy weapons that had overly telegraphed starts and could be outspaced, pretty easily. However, with 1.10, Sword Dance could reliably break poise with medium weapons, and gave me access to what I needed most on the Longsword, Hyperarmor. Sword Dance does have initial startup frames before the Hyperarmor kicks in, but once they have started, can reliably trade with weapons as heavy as greatswords, curved greatswords, or two-handed scythe. The follow-up downswing on the Ash has immediate Hyperarmor frames and no startup. What this means is I can Sword Dance trade into many Hyperarmor heavy weapons, not have the animation broken, and because the animation hits multiple times and usually procs Frostbite, I can win those trades. Combined with the fact that Sword Dance usually combos into an offhand dagger hit, I'm doing big damage and scaring the hell out of players in the process. Lastly, with Sword Dance, I now have Hyperarmor trading and a roll catch mixed in with the running R2s, R2 pokes, and now poise breaking R1s, turning this into a super fun, fast-paced, aggression momentum build. I know most of my videos are longer content, so I appreciate everyone hanging out and watching it. Now, I know that not everybody watches it all the way through, or some people just kind of skip through it. That's absolutely fine. 28 minutes is a long time to watch content from anybody. It's a long time to watch invasions from another person's perspective, too. But I do hope that you at least enjoy some of the invasions if you don't get anything from them. And if you do get something from them, that's great. I'm hoping you get at least one thing from every one of my videos. But if not, and you just kind of enjoy watching some of the invasions and listening to me mindlessly ramble on, that's fine too. The next video I have posted will be far shorter and just kind of a fun little thing I've wanted to do for a while. As a side note, I'm going to post one more video down in the description below. There's a newer YouTube person that I came across through YouTube recommendations from all things. And it's a video about them trying invasions for the first time, changing their mind about it, and generally just having a positive experience. So you know I love content like that, so I will post that down in the description below. Go give it a watch. Now, as the last part of this video, I'm going to showcase some duels in the arena. I know that, arena duels are not for everybody. Not everybody likes them or wants to engage in this type of PvP in the game, and I understand that. I will occasionally. Most times when I actually go into the arena are during new patches, times like this when I want to test things out. And I do have fun doing this, but the rest of the time I'm pretty much doing invasions strictly just because I find them more fun. That being said, this is not, obviously, the winning sellsword. This is the Lucent Suitor. This is my level 136, quote-unquote, meta range build, just because that's where you get arena duels. Essentially, though, he's exactly the same. He is a strength int build character, just much higher level. And he is, just kind of using the same setup. The only thing is, instead of the offhand Misericord, he uses offhand Wakizashi, but it's still the longsword. Both the offhand dagger and the longsword itself are frost infused. Talismans are pretty much exactly the same. And he's, again, running about 83 or 84 poise. So it's right in line. with what I was doing on the Waning Sellsword. I was practicing with this build and this weapon style, the straight sword and offhand dagger setup, to see how it fared for Hyperarmor trading. Specifically, that's what I wanted to test in this patch, to see if it would work at all. And it does. It really does. There's a lot of Hyperarmor trading with this Ash that works very, very well. Now, I did make a mention to this earlier, and I wanted to remind people again. The Ash of War itself, Sword Dance, has startup frames before the Hyperarmor kicks in. So if you get caught too early before you get, in the animation, before those Hyperarmor frames start up, you will get broken out of that animation. And I'll show a couple examples in this. I think I actually include a small clip that shows the difference of when those frames start up and, what attacks can break you out of it versus what attacks will not break you out of it once that's started. And I'll show a couple of smaller clips also, basically kind of giving you a side-by-side of what this Hyperarmor can trade through and what it cannot trade through on a medium weapon. I won't, like I said, I don't need to go through every bit of it. Y'all are adults, you can kind of see what works and what doesn't. But feel free to watch, or feel free, if you have, again, gotten all you want out of this video, to just leave. Again, I appreciate all of your time. I hope that you got something from this. If you didn't watch the entire thing, I hope you just maybe took one thing that you liked, or one thing that you could find useful. Again, this build is very fun. I love this playstyle. It's straight 1.10. We'll see how the game fleshes out as more patches come out to kind of redefine this new system that we're in. But I hope y'all are off to a good start to your weekend, and I'll catch you in the next one for a much shorter video. Thanks, guys and girls, and all of you.